Hi everyone, welcome back to another exclusive podcast from IronFX, where we are dedicated to bringing you the absolute best education to help you take your trading to the next level. My name is Ketan Ramachandra, and in today's podcast, we'll be talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or the SPR. Now, for those who may have not heard of this phrase or term before, don't worry, this is new for me as well. The first time I heard about this Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or the SPR, was in the middle of last year, so around May and June of 2022. So this is something new that we can all learn together. Right. So what is the SPR, or the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and what did the US government use it for? Okay. So just to start off with some basics, the SPR is the world's largest supply of emergency crude oil that was established primarily to reduce the impact of disruptions in the supplies of petroleum products and to carry out the obligations of the United States under the International Energy Program. So the oil stocks are stored in huge underground salt caverns at four sites along the coastline of the Gulf of Mexico. The sheer size of the SPR, which is roughly about 714 million barrels, makes it a significant deterrent to oil import cutoffs and a key tool in foreign policy. Now, the SPR oil can be sold competitively, or what this means is can be sold in the open market when the president finds, pursuant to the conditions set forth in the Energy Policy and Conservation Act, that a sale is required. So that means the US president, in this case last year, President Joe Biden, got the authority to use the SPR and release a fixed amount of barrels throughout 2022. Now, prior to 2022, such conditions have only existed three times, mostly in June 2011, when the president directed a sale of 30 million barrels of crude oil to offset disruptions in supply due to the unrest in Libya. During this severe energy supply interruption, the United States acted in coordination with its partners in the International Energy Agency, or the IEA. Together with the IEA countries, they released a total of 60 million barrels of petroleum. Now, back to 2022. The US government acted alone this time round. So they got the authority to release about 180 million barrels of oil starting in April all the way till October of 2022. So do take note, this time round, the US did act independently, and it did it because crude oil prices skyrocketed in the first half of 2022. Right, we all know why that happened, because we had the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which caused energy prices and other commodities to spike up. Now, why did they decide to release the oil? Well, basically, prices are all about supply and demand. So, if demand is going to remain relatively stable in the US, and if you have new supply coming into the market, that's going to likely to drive prices lower. So, this was the idea behind the SPR release. So, the SPR was, the release from the SPR was authorized at the end of March of 2022. And the first round of release started in April. Right, so a total of 180 million barrels of oil were released starting in April all the way till October. To give an idea of what would the inventory levels were like for the SPR, when they first started in April, there were about 568 million barrels of oil, and by the time they got to October, there were only 390 million barrels of oil left. Right, to give an idea of how much of an impact the extra barrels of oil had on prices, WTI oil went as high as $120 per barrel back in June of 2022. And by the end of the year, in December 2022, prices had dropped to roughly $70 per barrel. So you're looking at almost a 50% reduction in crude oil prices. Now, because crude oil prices fell, retail gas prices are going to fall as well. So do take note, in America, petrol is commonly known as gas, right? And petrol stations are related to gas stations, okay? So, and gas prices are quoted, retail gas prices are quoted in dollars per gallon rather than dollars per liter. Okay, so at its peak, when WTI oil was trading around $120 a barrel, retail gas prices in the US were at about $5 per gallon. And by the time WTI oil prices dropped to $70 per barrel in December, retail gas prices also dropped, falling to roughly $3 per gallon. Right, so we are seeing huge reductions in not only in crude oil prices but also in gas prices at the retail pumps. Now, why is this important? Because inflation was a big concern for the US and all other global economies as well. So in order to combat inflation, they tapped the SPR to drive down the prices of crude oil, which in turn has a knock-on effect on retail gas prices as well. So as we can clearly see, retail gas prices went from $5 per gallon in June of 2022 all the way down to $3 per gallon in December of 2022. Now this has a major impact for households, businesses, and industries. Because as energy costs start to retreat sharply, household expenditures reduce, business operations may also reduce, and also when you have businesses involved in the transportation sector, like trucking and so on and so forth, like companies like Amazon, UPS, their business costs go down as well. So overall, by releasing the SPR, WTI oil or crude oil prices in general will start to fall as we have more supply coming into the market where demand is relatively stable, and then this has knock-on effects on the other aspects of the economy and also on retail prices. So in the end, households benefit, companies benefit, industries benefit. So this was the whole idea behind why the US government decided to tap the SPR and release 180 million barrels of oil in 2022. Now, let's fast forward to the present time. What's the outlook for oil and what is the government going to do with the SPR? As we mentioned, by the end of October and end of last year, the SPR levels had reached roughly about 380 million barrels, and that's where they currently stand as well. Now, the US government naturally needs to refill this SPR because it is an emergency stockpile, right? So, they have announced that when WTI oil is within the price range of $67 to $72 per barrel, this is a range where the US government will be actively repurchasing oil from the open market and restocking the SPR. Now, they have yet to announce a commencement date, but it could happen in the third quarter or fourth quarter of this year. Now, okay, in addition, when they go into the open market to buy oil to replenish the SPR, this provides lift to prices. Right, as we see currently for the second half of 2023, the global outlook for oil is not very optimistic at the present moment. This is due to projections of weaker global economic growth as a whole. And also, we have not seen China reopen in the manner that many economists and analysts had predicted. Their recovery or reopening has been rather sluggish, and the demand for crude oil from China has not been as high as what many analysts or economists had predicted. That is why we see crude oil prices being relatively subdued, and if the US government does decide to embark on the repurchasing of crude oil to replenish the SPR, we may see crude prices being lifted in the near future. And also we have OPEC, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, extending their production cuts, which in addition are helping to support oil prices as well. So if the US government does decide to embark on replenishing the SPR, combined with the ongoing production cuts by OPEC members, it is quite likely crude oil prices could remain lifted despite the weakening outlook in 2023. Okay, so do take note of any official announcement by the US government with regards to replenishing its SPR, because this would have a pretty decent impact on crude prices and could help them remain elevated, and we could see prices edge higher by the end of the year. All right, so this is today's topic about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in America and how it was utilized by the US government to combat inflation, and what is the next step by them, and ultimately what can we expect for crude prices as we round up 2023. Okay, now that's it for me for today's podcast on the SPR. Do remember to subscribe to our podcast here at IronFX, as we are dedicated to bringing you the very best education to take your trading to the next level. Until then, stay safe and trade safe.